Well, we're starting something new this week. We've got a new series that we're going to dive into. We have wrapped up our First John series, and we're gonna be doing something new and something I'm really excited about. We're gonna take a long, about 19 weeks, 18, 19 weeks, something like that. We're gonna take a long look at the Old Testament. We're gonna look at what I want to do is kind of focus on that grand story of what God is doing with God's people all throughout. And so we're gonna start this week with the flood story in Genesis 6 through 9. And it's kind of a heavy story. I mean, it's I don't know. It's kind of a heavy story, and we're going to dive into it. We're going to look at maybe some of the implications of it, but we're going to focus on the flood. But then we're going to really focus on the promise of God, and we're also going to dive into and take a look at what do the Israelites say about God in this story? What kinds of statements are they making about God? What does God do? How does God behave? What kind of emotions does God feel? And so if you're going to read ahead, I want you to look for those things. Look for the ways that God is described all throughout the story. And I think you actually might be surprised. So anyway, look for those things. Read ahead. Do some of your own study. We're going to be reading just, small chunks from each of the 4 chapters because we don't have time to read chapter 6 through 9 on Sunday morning. But that's the story we're going to be focusing on, and again, in particular, the flood and the promise in that story. And that's going to kind of propel us forward through the rest of looking at the Old Testament because that promise of God ultimately gets fulfilled in the person of Jesus. And that's where we're going with looking at this grand story of God in the Old Testament. Around Christmas time, we're gonna take a walk through the Gospel of Matthew for however many weeks after that. And so this looking through the Old Testament is a build-up time to looking at the story of Jesus again. And so this idea of promise, of course, gets fulfilled in Jesus, but it comes about here and other places throughout the Old Testament story. So I hope you enjoy reading the story again. Maybe try to look at it with some fresh eyes and come ready Sunday to dive into it together.